Warning: the content of these videos contains adult themes which may be distressing. Viewer discretion is advised. Everything you are about to hear is taken from court documents, trial transcripts, and various media sources. Hello everyone, and welcome back to True Crime with Mystery Maverick. Today we continue to unravel the mystery: who killed Stephanie Crowe? Homicide detectives Ralph Claytor and Barry Sweeney of the EPD would head up the investigation. The remaining members of the Crowe family were removed from the scene and taken to the Escondido Police Department for questioning. Each family member would be subjected to a strip search, including Judith, who had just been through cancer surgery, and Stephanie's younger sister, 10-year-old Shannon, who were allowed to keep their underwear on. Around 9:30 a.m, Detective Mark Risley would interview Shannon at the request of homicide detectives Claytor and Sweeney. The detective would ask Shannon if she had been a victim of any form of sexual abuse, to which she replied she had not. Shannon described waking up to screaming and recalls going into the hallway where she saw her brother Michael looking scared. Shannon ran straight to her grandmother, who was standing in the kitchen, and did not look at or see Stephanie. When asked if she knew what Stephanie's condition was, Shannon stated, "I know that she is not alive." She would later describe her relationship with her family as good, and besides the usual sibling conflicts and disagreements over, quote, silly stuff, she described a pretty average family life. In another preliminary interview, Detective Risley would later talk to 14-year-old Michael Crowe. In a later report, Risley claims there was an attempt made to videotape or tape record the interview, but due to technical difficulties, this did not happen. Michael remembers falling asleep around 10 o'clock and being awoken by a pounding on the garage door. He said that the noise did not go on for long and he went back to sleep. Michael would further go on to tell Detective Risley that he had woken up a second time around 4 a.m. in the morning. Michael states he had awoken with a headache and gone to the kitchen to get some Tylenol and milk and then returned to his room. Michael said that he did not notice any of the other bedroom doors open and went straight back to bed. The next thing Michael remembers is being awoken by his mother screaming Stephanie's name in the hallway and seeing his mother leaning over Stephanie's body. Michael, like Shannon, was asked if he knew of Stephanie's current condition, and he said he had no idea how or why she was injured. At 10 p.m, Judith Kennedy was interviewed, and again the interview was not video or tape recorded. She reports that her son had locked the sliding glass door and that she had not checked the laundry room door, as she had assumed he had locked that too. All in all, the Crowe family would spend almost 15 hours at the police station, being processed, photographed and interrogated. In a later TV interview, Stephen Crowe would describe a hostage scene at the police station when he had tried to take his family and leave. As no one had yet been identified as the perpetrator, police placed an order of protection on the two children, fearing one of the parents may be responsible, and Shannon and Michael would be taken to the Polinsky Children's Home for abused children. Once there, the two terrified and grieving kids would reportedly beg a social worker to let them stay in the same room together. Subsequently, the Crowe parents would be sent to a local motel and would be unable to return to the place they once called home. Victimology. Stephanie was just 12 years old at the time of her murder, living with her mum, dad and siblings. There are no known reports from the Crowe home of abuse, neglect or even domestic disturbance. Investigators would question Stephanie's teachers, school friends and neighbours, and would even ask her parents who would have a reason to kill Stephanie. Everyone they spoke with said the same thing. No one would want to hurt Stephanie. She was the kindest, sweetest girl. The only risk factor for Stephanie is that she was a child, meaning that she was vulnerable. There is nothing else in Stephanie's lifestyle that would have increased her risk of becoming a victim of violent crime. Crime scene investigators would arrive at the Crowe home around 8:30 a.m, where they were informed that the family had been removed from the scene and taken in for questioning. Around 11:55 p.m, Detective Claytor would issue a search warrant on the property, and crime scene officers would measure, photograph and document the scene. Crime scene officer Portia Nowak documented her crime scene observations in an EBD evidence report. She notes paying particular attention to the entry and exits. On the west side of the home, she noted a partially open screen on a sliding glass door that was closed but unlocked, which went from the kitchen onto the patio area. The southwest bedroom window was slightly open, with a cable running out of the bottom left-hand corner, but the screen was undisturbed. Nowak goes on to state that over 280 pieces of evidence were collected from the Crowe residence, including parts of the wall in Stephanie's bedroom. The crime scene was bloody. It was found that the top end of Stephanie's bed was saturated in blood, particularly on the bedsheet that was underneath the comforter. Upon closer inspection, one of the comforters also showed several holes sliced into the top portion. Bloodstains were collected from the west wall above the bed rail and from the baseboard along the east wall between the door and the closet. Bloody fingerprints and palm patterns were photographed on the west and east bed rails. Nowak noticed a twig found near Stephanie's head and another in the hallway in front of Michael's room. A novel titled The Twisted Window would be found under Stephanie's foot, and a drawer in her room had been pulled out and turned over on the floor. She further identified several strands of hair in both Stephanie's hands, and they were collected as evidence. The chief medical examiner for the San Diego County, Dr. Blackburn, would arrive at the scene around 12:45 p.m. and document the body as being in full avidity. Several prints were later lifted by CSO B. Ray and Martin. Interior wooden south entrance door, door frame of laundry room and bathroom door, kitchen sliding glass door, and the words "Kill, Kill" were found handwritten on the windowsill inside Stephanie's bedroom. Nowak would later conclude that she found no signs of forced entry during the examination of the home's exterior. Investigators collected a number of items from Michael's room, including writings, drawings, school books, videos and posters. Other items included a silver pocket knife, tabloid magazines featuring the OJ trial from the bookcase, and a mask from the movie Scream. Investigators would go on to use fluorescent fingerprint powder around Stephanie's door and doorway, the main entry door, and the Crowe's parents' bedroom sliding glass door. 3 days after Stephanie's murder, a number of officers would conduct a grid search of the surrounding areas around the property using metal detectors. During this search, it is reported that Detective Han located and collected a knife. All the physical evidence that was collected and stored at the scene was loaded into a rider truck and entered into custody of Detective George Durgin of the EPD Crime Lab on the 28th of January. Investigators waited anxiously for the results. Meanwhile, at the San Diego County Medical Examiner's office, Dr. Blackburn, the chief medical examiner, would perform Stephanie's autopsy. Blackburn noted there were no signs of rape or sexual assault and/or sexual activity present. He would attribute Stephanie's cause of death to severe blood loss due to the severing of two main arteries from sharp force trauma. 12-year-old Stephanie Crowe had been stabbed to death, and he ruled the manner of death a homicide. Stephanie had suffered from 9 stab wounds all in all, which consisted of 6 stab wounds and 3 incise wounds, and a cut on her hand. Blackburn documented 1 9/16 of an inch stab wound on the left cheek. He measured wound B to be 1 1/16 of an inch, which penetrated into the left ear by 1 to 1/4 of an inch. Wound C was an incised wound on the right earlobe, and he noted a tiny superficial cut above it. Wound D was on the left side of the neck, which measured 7/16 of an inch in length and penetrated 1 inch into the neck. Wound E was another incised wound on the right side of the back of the neck to the earlobe. The middle portion was through the thick part of the skin, and the rest of the wound was partially through the skin. Wound F was a deep stab wound to the top of the right shoulder, 2.5 inches in length, extending down 1 inch into the muscle tissue. Wound G was a stab wound to the back of the right shoulder, which measured 15/16 of an inch, penetrating 1 inch into the body. Wound H was a larger wound to the right shoulder, which he described as having a complex shape. The final wound, labelled I, was a large stab wound on the front of the left armpit, which had penetrated deep into the body. The last 2 wounds, H and I, were ultimately found to be the fatal wounds that severed large blood vessels that caused the majority of Stephanie's bleeding. In his later grand jury testimony, Blackburn stated that if not for wound H and I, Stephanie would more than likely have survived. He further stated that lividity was fixed on her right side, meaning Stephanie was dead for at least 6 hours prior to the doctor's arrival at the scene. Blackburn estimates Stephanie's time of death 3 hours after she ate her last meal and 6 hours before she was found, putting her time of death between around 11 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. the night before. On the next episode, we delve into the police interviews and profile the suspects as we try to unravel the mystery: who killed Stephanie Crowe?